Hello, Lindsay, all the way from Boston in the United States. Welcome to Emerging Technology Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Amazing. I thought I'd give a bit of a background on you. You're the co-founder of the International Medical Community, which I'll get you to talk about in just a sec. Your background is law and you're qualified in Australia. You're a business strategist for medical tech startups, but other startups as well. Your passion or your interest is research into data integrity and cybersecurity. Now, that's a lot, Lindsay. For any normal person, that's a lot. So maybe if we go back, tell me about the International Medical Community. You co-founded?
Yes, so I'm actually a co-founder and director of International Medical Community. So essentially, it has a really fascinating story, actually, today in terms of like its inception. So it commenced around in 2020, and essentially, International Medical Community is essentially like a tech hub where we essentially look at bringing all the specified experts and knowledge within the MedTech community to come in under one space to really share knowledge and innovation ideas. But we really expand on that in terms of looking at how do we not just look at innovations from various methods, but also look at how can we ensure that there is a sense of accessibility to resources, to communities and regions that otherwise would not have that level of accessibility. So it really, again, it came out of the pandemic with the intention of really bringing in all experts from academia, from private sector, from the public sector, as well as practicing, as well as medical practitioners as well. So to come together with that intention of, okay, what exactly are the trends? How do we ensure that, these trends are innovative, but then how do we expand it to ensure that it does look at various forms of regulations, whether it's data privacy that we need to consider? How do we ensure that there's some level of infrastructure in terms of protection against cybersecurity attack? And how do we then utilize that to now look at regions that otherwise would not have that same level of access?
So what sort of regions are you looking at the moment? And where are these medtech startups coming from?
Yeah, so we're essentially looking at, so we primarily started with Europe, given the fact that there were quite a bit of the expertise that were already there. So it really was about formulating that expertise. And then from there, we actually partnered up with various communities within the continent of Africa. And we've also started to build resources within the US as well as South America as well. So in terms of the medical tech startups, essentially, they are pretty based globally. But I think for us, it's really more about how do we kind of pull together the necessary resources for these medtechs? So it's definitely one way of looking at it. So we're not limiting ourselves in terms of particularly looking at one region. I think our region as of now would be Europe, as well as Africa, because we are building a strong connection between the two regions. So it's really looking at what are the trends that are happening as of now. So we are a newbie. So, in terms of
You're a startup for startups.
Yes, we are, exactly. So we're really, our intention, of course, is to have that global outreach. But in relation to where we are right now, we're all based off of different regions, the co-founders. So we are looking within our own jurisdictions as well and see how we can kind of bring IMC to these different regions.
Yeah, and especially Africa. I personally am seeing a lot of stuff, innovation coming out of Africa, and I just follow it and go, wow, that's truly amazing. So if we go back again, you're not just looking after MedTech. Who else are you looking after?
Oh my goodness. So if it's not MedTech, so I'm working with an organization that's actually based in Nigeria, where the intention is to actually spread information about data privacy. Within the continent, the idea of data privacy is kind of like a hot topic in many different ways. We're looking at, okay, how do we kind of really navigate the importance of, cross-border transactions, understanding what actually are consumers' rights. So it's really interesting because it's not. I think the intention is not simply copy and paste, the regulations with regard to the GDPR, the general data protection regulations, and like plotting it within these different regions or within the continent. It's really about how do we then look at these regulations as an example that has already been drafted and enacted, and then how we then implement them from the lens of the African people and the African culture. So I think it's really about understanding, okay, look, these are the uniqueness that are possessed within Africa, within the continent. So from that, how do we now utilize the regulation to really fit into the culture and not the other way around? So
Yeah.
that's where a lot of our where more of our implementations looking at is just really kind of building that level of collaboration of other data privacy, looking at, of course, again, how technology is being utilized, and particularly with AI at the moment, it's just such a huge thing.
It
And
is.
how do we then kind of incorporate all that? So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we could like there's AI is such a huge topic at the moment, but there's pros and cons. We just need to balance it as human beings, I think.
Right.
And AI will certainly help with, I think, with keeping up with the regulations, because it's going to absorb those new things that come up, and then even us, we don't know that new regulations have come out, so it's about communicating that.
Well, and I think that to kind of speak on that, I think that's where a lot of the challenges lie. Is that actually I would think of it the opposite in terms of there's so many innovations that are occurring at the moment that regulations are actually having a hard time catching up. So
Yeah,
even I'm a lawyer, it just feels like, oh wait, this is just happening. Oh wow, now there's a whole new level of ethical issues that we need to consider, or now there's another form of data breach that's happening. So how do we ensure that there is a regulatory process to hold those who are actually committing these breaches or are not taking the proper care to actually be accountable? And what does accountability actually looks like to make sure that's punitive? So those are a lot of the issues that what I do understand or I see within the legal perspective is just how do you kind of counter balance the innovation with the regulation? Because at the same token, you don't want to kill innovation. I think that innovation is very important. It's very needed, especially within the medtech industry. It's just really about ensuring a level of precision. We have so many robotics that are coming through, or even the idea of decentralizing clinical studies to ensure that people could actually do clinical studies from their homes. And yes, I think that these innovations are very critical nowadays. But then how do you ensure that regulation, they don't kill that innovation, but then there is a level of protection? And I feel that's a very delicate balance that we
yeah.
need to.
It's definitely about governance, but it's also about education. I think a lot of people are still thinking, back in the 70s when the original rules were written, unfortunately. And, those have not changed. They're still the same, and they haven't, kept up. And that's with a lot of things. So, a lot of things have not kept up. And
Yeah.
we just have to promote education in this area. I
Yeah,
really believe that.
I absolutely agree with you as well. I think that I think the issues that we're so good at fearing the unknown rather than like, plunging in and trying to be curious about it. And I think that once we're so quick at, when someone's a victim of either cybersecurity or there's something that occurred that's technology based, it's easy to even shy away from that even more. So I think that what it is just seeing that, through education, as you mentioned, that innovation is actually incredible. The use of technology is credible as long as it's utilized in an effective manner. And I think that one of the things that we're also dealing with, that's what we saw from the pandemic, is the increase of cyber attack and increase of data breaches that occurred. So I think what we're doing, I think we're doing a pretty good job for the most part in terms of really look like addressing these issues, right? They may not have a complete solution at the moment, but these are being addressed to the point that regulations are actually coming about in relation to as an answer to a lot of these complex issues that we're facing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's not just med tech either. It's across the board. It really is
Exactly.
across the board. But then again, there are startups that are actually approaching that exact problem. So the whole idea of having a startup or whatever is because there's a problem that someone sees and they want to solve it, and it could be exactly what you're talking about. So
I agree. I agree. And I think this is where, for international medical community is, obviously I'm using an example from MedTech, but that's really where we come in, right? It's just really kind of fill the gaps in many different ways and bringing in the academics, the engineers, the innovators, as well the practitioners, and coming together with the intention of building the necessary prototype with as much assistance as possible. And I think we actually did that successfully. We actually had a conference in Lyndsay, Australia back in, I believe, 2020, where we actually assisted an inventor to create that ventilator as a response to the crisis that were going on in 2020. So what happened is that we actually had it was under Series Global, but essentially we work with so many different stakeholders. We had the mayor of Austria, of Linz, Austria, come on board, provided his
wow.
support. Yeah, we had the Bank of Austria come through and actually flew the inventors over to Austria. We partnered up with a company that actually had a spatial garage that with the tools needed to build it. We had the engineers and the academia that was going to come and do research. And ultimately, and it became a media affair. And not only did we do that, we also had an actual conference for over 2 weeks about different aspects of technology and medtech that we need to consider. And myself was included in from a presenting on the issue in data privacy within the medtech. And I think
I might have checked in on that one if I remember correctly.
So, and I think this is where it becomes critical, where, as you mentioned, the education, the communication side of things, and bringing all these stakeholders together into one room and with an idea, whether it's an idea in terms of assisting a tech startup. So I think for us, it's really about providing that level of support, but also too, whilst doing that, really kind of challenging all the stakeholders to think about the disparities and how do we then expand that level of innovation to ensure that, whether it's jurisdictions or communities that otherwise would not have these level of access actually are part of the table, are part of the conversation as well.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And do I really want to go there? Do you have any issues with, there's a lot of stuff going over the last few years where there's been a lot of division. Does that come up at all, or are these collaborators just really excited about working together?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, I think that we've been, I don't want to say lucky, right? I just think that I think it's probably been a good naive process in a way where everyone's just so excited about the idea and just about us being, really being the glue to a lot of these stakeholders. In terms of disagreement, I think I've been really lucky to be working with a team where we do disagree, but of course we also communicate our different our reasonings, and we are able to get to the drawing board and come up with a solution as a result. But with that said, we definitely cannot ignore that the reality is that when it comes to not just innovation, but just people in general, people have their own stereotypes, they have their own prejudice when it comes to engaging with other cultures or engaging with other people for whatever their own history is. And I think that that hasn't been addressed just yet. But I think that in terms of when we do come across, and I'm pretty sure we will, especially as we work globally and working with different characters along the way, I think that we have the groundings to understand how to approach this in a professional manner, but also in a way where it's also providing that moment of education as well. I think that as a team, we pretty much destroy the stereotypes in so many different ways. Like me, myself, I am Haitian, Australian, American, right? And I'm the director, but the CEO is Croatian. And the legal lead is from Ghana. The medical lead is actually from Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, and then the innovative lead, she's from Mexico.
I
So
love
like,
that.
there's so
I love that.
so we're literally from all these different regions, and I think that for us, that is our superpower: is how do we talk through the diversity? How do we showcase and highlight our culture through our thinking pattern, and pretty much present it in a way where it's just like, okay, this is where I'm coming from, this is my culture. And what I love about it is that we all have a sense of accountability and mutual respect for each other, where that actually is valued more so than anything. So yeah, so like I said, we're pretty lucky, but in terms of when it comes to dealing with different stakeholders, I feel it's only a matter of time, and I feel we'll be ready in terms of how to actually deal with that.
That's amazing. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's been an amazing conversation. Um, what time is it in Boston, by the way?
It is almost 10 p.m. I think it's 9:50, so it's almost
Okay,
10
so it's
p.m.
not too bad. I haven't got you up at 1 in the morning. Well, thank you for your time. What a wonderful conversation. We'll have to do this again.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Debbie. Have a lovely day.
You're welcome.
Bye.